I really wanted to do something where I wore like a horror outfit today or a costume or something to really showcase the gothic horror I'll be discussing. But the best I could do is really like a Pirates of the Caribbean hoodie and a Welcome Foolish Mortals hat from Disney's Haunted Mansion, which this is about as good. It glows in the dark, but it kind of looks like garbage right now this way because I guess lighting and stuff. So I'm going to turn it around backwards because this looks cool, and you never know if I have to arm wrestle someone later, and you got to have the hat on backwards for that, right? All right, today Ravenloft. Here we go. Let's talk about Ravenloft, but not this Ravenloft. No, that just came. That's for a later date, and we'll be discussing this Ravenloft tonight on Living for Crits with Evie. We're gonna make her open this thing up and watch her fun anti 5e reaction to that. No, we're talking about this hefty Ravenloft Realm of Terror box set. Wait, where's the box? Oh yeah. So this is one of the victims of moving because I've moved so many times over the years, and unfortunately, as many uh, fans of second edition boxes know, they hold up only so well. This actually lives in my Mask of the Red Death box, and this stuff does fit in there. So I shoved this in there. But this is my first AD&D second edition campaign setting love, or any D&D campaign setting love. For some reason, this is what I wanted when I was a kid and I just started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I remember like the summer that I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. I know all y'all out there with your heavy metal and rocking out, thinking about listening to like I don't know Led Zeppelin and different bands in the 70s and 80s about they're just like hardcore, loud metal, death metal, whatever. I'm not a big metal person, so I don't know the names of this stuff. Um, but for me, it doesn't get more D&D than like Bryan Adams because I discovered Dungeons and Dragons the summer of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. So not long after that, sadly there was no Prince of Thieves for campaign setting. That'd have been awesome, right? Not long after that, I started dipping into after starting with the original D&D box set, not the original one, but basic D&D box set. I drifted into AD&D pretty quickly because everyone was playing that on the street, and this is like what 92 and I heard about campaign settings. And I looked at all of them, and no one else had the Ravenloft box set. Like everyone was playing like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that. They didn't have Ravenloft. I wanted Ravenloft, so I told my parents to get me Ravenloft. And this was actually, to be fair, this was not the first box set. The first box set was they brought me Forbidden Lore. That was the box set follow up to this that had the dice in it and it had the tarot card deck because they didn't know that there were multiple box sets. Remember yesterday I was talking about how like with kids playing role-playing games, it's easier to say get them Dungeons and Dragons, it's on the shelf, instead of saying get them DCC or Fantasy Age. Yeah, that's part of the problem with my parents and their education about role-playing games at the time. But this is the setting that, not only sparked my initial joy in some of the original Dungeons and Dragons campaign settings, but it also was the setting that brought me back to Dungeons and Dragons now. I mean, the existence of the new campaign setting book is what kind of sparked me into looking at 5e again and being able to play this again. Just feels so right. And I've been chasing this experience for a while. I have tried other games to capture the same feel I got from playing Ravenloft because I have run multiple campaigns in Ravenloft, including 100+ session 4e campaign set in Ravenloft and Planescape going back and forth. Called it Ravenscape. I talk about it a lot. It's like my ultimate gaming experience of all time. 09 to 2012. Some of the best years of gaming I've ever had. I've played games to capture this feel, and nothing has quite felt the same way as Ravenloft. And I'm not talking about, going and killing Strahd in Barovia. I've done that. I've GM'd that, and I've played in that before. I'm talking the rest of the core of Ravenloft, the rest of the domains of Dread. They were all so cool, and each one had such an individual feel. And it all started right here. So what I do want to show here is just break out what you get in this if you find it, because you actually can get this still. So my hat is so crooked. Oh well. You can still get this. You can get this over on DriveThruRPG. I'll put the link below so you can go find it. It comes print on demand if you want, but I'm sure it's a book. So the original Ravenloft book, when I remember cracking this thing open, it just oozes and drips with flavor inside. You know, you have the cool black and dark gray border around everything. You know, it's really well laid out. I feel really easy to read, and for a young kid who didn't know a lot about horror. I guess the original Gothic horror, that stuff that came out in the 50s, 60s. My dad loved horror movies, but the stuff he had us watch were movies like Critters and Ghoulies and like 80s horror. We watched a lot of 80s horror. I remember being terrified of a movie called Rawhead Rex, and it scared the living hell out of me. Uh, so there is some 80s horror in how I run my games, or how I ran my games back then. But this definitely, this Ravenloft really, I think it was pretty adaptable. You could run whatever you want with it or in it. So Ravenloft itself, the book. I gotta say, when you're flipping through this, while it is written for second edition, there's so much material in here and so much meat that you won't feel like. I mean, look, this is the bloodline of the Delisnia family. I mean, you don't. This isn't written for an edition here, right? So you got a really cool book in there, and then you got maps. And I loved the maps for Ravenloft because they all had this cool, elevation, like look. How you would call it? Topography, a cool topographical appearance. I don't know. So like the valleys were really clear. I like this because it really showcased the differences. I think of it in the mountains around the areas and stuff. You got Barovia is like right there, right in the mountains, in the Balanock Mountains. I ran most of my games, just to share this. When I first started running it, I ran it originally, a lot of games in, where is it here? I gotta find it. In Cardicas, I did some in Barovia. I ran a lot of adventures in Sithicus for a while because I was a Dragonlance fan not long after discovering Ravenloft. And then later on, I ran a lot of games in Richemouleau and de Montloup because I was taking French in high school and I could pronounce that stuff really easily. The other stuff that was cool in this box was it came with all of these cards. So, I mean, so everything from like here's some like locations in the setting with maps and stuff, and just all these cool handouts, which you don't quite get anymore when you open a box set up. Some game companies you do. I know when I opened up my Lankmar box set, you get a lot with that. But we're talking lots of cards. I don't know how this is going to look in Drive-Thru RPG, by the way. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here, a lot of great handouts. Some more useful than others. For instance, if you're going to go and you're going to hunt down, Vlad Drakov or whatever, who is the Lord of Falkovnia. Oh crap, they were stuck together. Look at that, because that's not Vlad Drakov. This was the image you got, and the map was still just the picture of the outside. So I guess if you're just scaling the walls, it's great. But if it's inside Drakov's castle and Falkovnia, you're going to have to do some work yourself. Or I guess back then it was draw your own maps, and now it's going to be right. You can go online and go search for something. I guess there was the fear checks was the one mechanic that I remember getting from this game, and really the power checks as well, because the fear mechanic is not unlike a lot of other fear mechanics you're going to see in other role-playing games, or things that are going to frighten your character and scare them off. But the power mechanic, there was a rule in this game, and I know it exists. I think in the 3rd edition version, which I do have. I did keep. This is my 3rd edition stack. That's my 2nd edition stack. There's my only copy of the original module. I have it in this 25th anniversary edition version, which I've played. But there was in 2nd edition there was a powers check where certain powers that you cast, certain things you did, whether it was certain spells you cast or certain actions you took, could start to make you like a dark lord yourself, like could like turn you to the dark side. And if you were visiting Ravenloft as like a, if you came through the mist from another setting, whether it was Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or your own homebrewed setting, and you became too dark or shadowy or like evil, if the domain of dread felt you as one of their own, you could get stuck there, and that would be, I guess, it for your character if it was a long-term campaign. uh, I think one of the reasons why I love this setting so much is what it did for my style of play back then. When we played Ravenloft, we played it so differently than other campaign settings. For instance, I remember reading in Dungeon magazine. I don't think it was Dragon, it was Dungeon. Some tips on running Ravenloft, and my friends and I went crazy with it. So we would often go to my friend Randy's house, or we'd play in my den, and we would light candles, and we would try to put like red scarves around lamps to make it more dreary, and then we'd burn incense. My habit of burning incense during role playing games, which I still do from time to time, that all came from Ravenloft. I can't imagine what my parents or my friends' parents would think if when they walked in on us and saw us all with these game books out, burning incense with candles and red scarves around, keeping it as dark as possible, because that was the goal. How dark can we keep the room so that I can actually see the books and they can see their character sheets? And a lot of my creepy gothic and Halloween aesthetic for our house that I've like been obsessed with for years, the fact we have like skulls everywhere, a lot of this comes from my love with Ravenloft. The first adventure I ran with Ravenloft that really invoked that feel wasn't actually a Ravenloft adventure. It was from Dungeon Magazine 29. It was called Through the Night by Leonard Wilson. And I remember it was the very first adventure I ran in Ravenloft. I remember the exact day running it at my friend's house. And when I ran the game, in the adventure, there are like you're at like an inn for the night, and there are farm animals there that are being drained of blood, and then soon there are other guests being drained of blood. And all my players knew I was running Ravenloft. They made Ravenloft characters, or characters who knew they were in Ravenloft. At least the players did. They thought, "Holy crap! James is throwing a vampire at us the first day." Well, in that adventure, it's not a vampire. It's a type of ooze called a slithering tracker. That's like as liquid as water that like drains your blood. But that cool feeling of them running around, not knowing what's hunting them, and eventually they had to kill it. Obviously it's just slime. So I don't want to say it was less scary, but because the final battle, I never remember the final battle in that game being more than they used torches. Actually, I think I've run the adventure 3 times. All 3 times they burned the inn down to the ground. So I mean, there's a lot to be said with nuking the site from orbit, right? So, but yeah, just the setting enough, just the name of the setting, Ravenloft, made you shudder, right? I could go on and on about this. I know I'm pushing the boundaries of what I want these videos to be, so I'm going to stop. I will say, I think my love of Ravenloft as a setting, compared to other horror settings I've played in, especially my recent dalliances with Shadow of the Demon Lord, is that this is a game that's dark and gothic, but it's not bleak and hopeless. And I think that sort of like skews more to my preference in horror. I mean, I have some weird, twisted fascinations with body horror stuff. I've been vocal that like my favorite horror movies now are things like Saw and Hostel. And that's like torture horror. That's not even body horror, right? But the cool thing about Ravenloft, it wasn't hopeless. You could always find the mists and maybe get home, unless you used powers that made you get stuck there. So again, I'll post a link to the Realm of Terror below, and that's that. So thanks for watching. Tonight, me and Evie are back on Twitch, all right, and that'll be cool, and we'll see what she says about all this stuff that we're doing right now. But make sure you all play nice and be kind to each other, kiddos.